Alex, interesting story that emerged here from Epic this week, where they have actually released press materials talking about stuttering problems and Unreal Engine's solution to the problem. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously there are still issues with Unreal Engine. The question is the extent to which it is the developers failing and the extent to which it's Epic's failing. And I'm not sure I got too many answers from that particular blog post, but, I only really gave it a short read, but it did seem to be the case that, hold on, guys, we've provided these tools to mitigate the issues. Why aren't you using them? Is that a fair appraisal, or is there actually anything more?
There's more in between the lines there, because this blog is talking about how I see the feedback in the developer community, as well as I'm presuming they're reading gaming feedback, people who play games, not just developers. There's a reason why people say the phrase stutter engine. Like, this is a literally common phrase that I've read way too often, and it doesn't originate from me. So they read all that, and they kind of, I think the blog is well structured, where it talks about why the issue occurs. It's talking about decisions that kind of informed the production of DirectX 12 in the beginning. Shaders were getting longer, more complex, etc. We didn't want to be spending a lot of time rendering them, break them up into smaller chunks, etc. Oh, this seems reasonable at a time when games have less shaders that are less complex, but now partially their own fault here. We have a lot more shaders. And on consoles, this is reasonable to a degree because we're just shipping the PSOs with the box. But, now on PC, where you don't have that luxury because it's different between driver versions, different between IHVs. They don't share a standard industry like x86 style of ISA here. It just doesn't make any sense anymore. So they talk about all that. They also talk about why DirectX 11 was beneficial at a time. It really could actually work and provide stutter-free experiences in games just by the driver doing a lot of the work here. But I was also spending a lot of CPU cycles and GPU cycles to make that the case, which is why DX12, et cetera, made maybe sense at that point in time. But also nowadays, if you were to try, which I've talked about before on the channel, if you did throw out a DX11 game with a modern amount of shaders in it, like we see in most games, it will still be stutter central at a lot of points. I saw this really, what was it, 2 years ago maybe it was 3 years ago 4 years ago? When did Shadow Warrior 3 come out? That was DX11.
That's an interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember, but that was a DX11 game which had shader compilation stutter on PC, and it was really obvious to point out. So it can obviously happen under DX11 as well too. The part of the blog that I slightly take issue with is the fact that they do say that they've that they've got a lot of it working with Fortnite, and I've shown time and time again that even in the latest version of Fortnite that the game is still really stuttery for your first couple of gameplay sessions. Now they kind of point that out, that there's global shaders that their current system still doesn't take care of. So they're not living up to their end of their bargain there. So there's that. Maybe that's the reason, one of the reasons why Fortnite still struggles, due to global shaders not being included in the PSO caching scheme. But also, I've heard from multiple developers behind the scene, and these are people who are really technically minded people, that the systems that they've provided to developers didn't necessarily actually function correctly from versions 5.1 to 5.4 if you tried to hook them up. You had to do specialized work to actually make them function. Maybe they've heard that internal feedback from people who are actually very gifted at working with these things. But I've also heard from multiple people behind the scenes that it actually didn't work as advertised behind the scene, and they had to do specific work to make it work for their games. So that is another thing. There was one part of this blog that I really liked, though. I mean, they're saying they're going to work on this in the future. Global shaders will be done. They say at the end, though, that they are going to want to work toward a system that is potentially I would say, more invisible to the developer, where they don't have to do much of anything at all to make a game a stutter-free experience on PC. That, I feel, is the nth degree goal for this. They also say, we are also working with hardware and software vendors to adapt drivers and graphics APIs to the way games use these systems in practice. The thing is, I actually think Windows and NVIDIA and AMD and Intel and even large distribution systems like Epic Game Store and Steam, they could play a much larger part in this. I feel like the design of DX12 doesn't fit with the modern context of the way games are developed. It doesn't make sense to make developers figure out this entire thing each and every time they make a game, when there could be an API designed around this, either distribution, shader pre-compilation, bundling them differently, having it be less intense, like the whole thing that was introduced into Vulkan most recently. Like, I feel like there's a large, complex system where I don't feel like Epic's wholly at fault for this here, but they've been at fault for it for a long period of time. Yeah, it's not a great situation, but I'm just generally very happy that they are very explicitly talking about it on the Unreal Engine blog. And there apparently was a stream, I believe, last night that I haven't been able to watch just yet that went into it as well, too. But it's good to see that my beating the drum and all the people out there, developers as well as game players, talking about wanting stutter-free experiences can potentially have large, reaching consequences, where Epic is now really going to be focusing on it in a better way. So that makes me happy. And I just wanted to call attention to this little blog here on DF Direct.
Cool. Good stuff. Anything you want to add, Oliver?
Not too much. Just to say that I upgraded my GPU to a 1590 recently after testing. And I got the retail drivers in there, and seeing shader comp in a variety of titles, including the now infamous possibly, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was not too good. Coming back to that shader compilation situation in Unreal. So hopefully there can be some widespread resolution of this issue across UE5 devs.
Yeah, there does seem to be at least a will to actually do something positive about it. And I guess it starts with this blog post.